Hi everybody, welcome to the Bolt Hole Biker and to a review that I really didn't think I was going to be doing. I didn't think I was going to be riding at all until this lockdown is over, but I've been given the opportunity to ride a KTM 790 Adventure, mainly because I had my Duke 790 booked in for a service at the dealership, and I phoned them expecting to get no answer, to be honest with you, and that they weren't going to be open. But it turns out they were, and they still have their workshop operational. The showroom's closed, but the workshop apparently does quite a bit of work on police bikes and blood bikes, etc, etc. So they've stayed open, albeit with a skeleton staff, and my service was still booked in if I was able to get the bike there. So I kind of ummed and ahed about it, and you know, I wasn't sure morally whether I was supposed to go, or legally even, and I used my bike for getting to and from work, so you know, keeping it roadworthy is an essential, I suppose. So anyway, rightly or wrongly, I took the decision to keep my appointment, and I took it in for a service, and I was lent this 2020 KTM 790 Adventure as a courtesy bike. So I thought I'd do a quick review on it. It's obviously not an in-depth review. I've only ridden it back from the dealership yesterday and back to the dealership today, but it's kind of probably a comparison, if you like, or a sort of compare and contrast between the 790 Adventure and the 790 Duke that I usually ride, because they're based around the same engine, the LC8 parallel twin engine. Slightly different treatment of the setup of the engines, and obviously the bike's quite a different setup. So I just sort of give an impression of the differences between the two and the similarities, and you know, just give you an idea of what I think of the Adventure. It's not the Adventure R or anything like that, it's the base model. My first impressions are, it's a really lovely bike. The engine is still, I mean, it's a fantastic engine, the LC8, and the engine feels very similar to the Duke. It's tuned very slightly differently for a little bit more torque. I think it's only something like 1 Newton meter torque more, and a little bit less at the top end. Basically, their bike's built for different scenarios, but it's still got that lovely lively feel to it. It's still pokey and punchy, and all the switch gear, and you know, the ride by wire throttle and all that's exactly the same. So it's still a fantastic bike. The seating position on the bike, obviously, you know, given that it's an adventure bike, is much more upright. It's a taller bike at the front, a wider bike at the front, although by no means overly tall or wide. You know, I've been on bikes before that have felt very, very sort of tall and top heavy, and this isn't that. It's really nicely balanced. This saddlebag petrol tank has just worked wonders for the balance of the bike. It is a little bit heavier, and it's obviously a bit bigger to push around when you're not on it than the Duke, but all in all, it is, you know, really light and nimble, nice and easy to tip into bends. Compared to the Duke, it's got an absolutely huge front wheel. It's a 21-inch spoked front wheel, I think is a bit thinner as well than on the Duke, but the handling on the road is fantastic, really good, absolutely no problems with that at all. The Duke was called the Scalpel, and this obviously isn't the Duke, but it's pretty accurate still. This is not a bike that has any handling issues. And the tyres, these Avon tyres, they seem pretty good for the road. Obviously I've not been off-road on them, but on the road, no problems whatsoever. One thing I will say is this screen, I'm not going to use the word rubbish, but it needs something doing to it. Maybe one of those sort of, you know, the little deflector things that clips onto the top or something like that, or changing for an aftermarket screen maybe. But the my helmet is in turbulent, dirty air. If I duck my head just to there, I don't know if you can hear it on the video, I mean, it is completely silent here. I could hear a pin drop, but as soon as my head goes up, I'm in really, really, really dirty air. And I don't even get that, nowhere near the wind noise that I'm getting now on the naked bike. So admittedly I've got nothing on my chest, and these fairings, you know, they're sort of clear plastic fenders that they've got down below the screen and around the front of the bike, and the fact that the tank's a bit wider and the way it's shaped around your knees, I've got really good wind protection, and the hand guards, I am not in the wind, my chest isn't in the wind, but my head, where's this car going? But my head is in really, really sort of dirty air. So either that would need to be an aftermarket screen or some sort of adaptation to this one. I don't mind the look of the screen, just not very good. Lovely seat, lovely riding position, handlebars nice and wide and taller than on the Duke, obviously, you know, it being an adventure bike. I mean, that is so nice on the bends. Oh, I need to slow down now. The longer travel suspension, the bigger front tyre. It is obviously a taller bike at the front. It's got more sort of there's more going on in front of you than on the naked. The Duke's got that obviously more of a Street Fighter sort of hunkered down feel to it, whereas this is a lot more sort of sit up and beg. My back is completely straight. It's really comfy in that respect. My arms are in a lovely comfy position. You could sit on this, obviously I haven't, but I think you could sit on this all day long comfortably. My feet are just beyond 90. They're sort of, they are tucked under me slightly, but not enough that I'm going to get any you know, ache in my knees or anything like that. Very comfortable. The foot pegs are nice and wide and flat. It's a really comfy bike to ride. On this particular bike, and I am going to put it down to this particular bike and not all adventures, because I'm sure this isn't an issue that other bikes have, the quick shifter is very stiff. The quick shifter on my Duke is like a knife through soft butter. It's fantastic. This one, you have to give it a good yank, to the point where I'm kind of just using the clutch most of the time, because it feels like I might be pulling it a bit too hard. Having said that, this bike has got 200 miles on it. It's not even had its first service yet, and you know, it might loosen up. See that? I just went from third to fourth and it was a good pull. Just as a short footnote to this video, I take back everything I said about the quick shifter on the Adventure. When I got it back to the dealers and I mentioned to them that it was a bit stiff on that bike, they looked at me a bit strange and then informed me that it hasn't had a quick shifter fitted to it. and it isn't standard on the Adventure, which I hadn't realised. So basically I was forcing it through the gears. Not my finest hour, but anyway, sorry Teesdale, and thanks for lending me the bike. I know you didn't have to, and I really appreciate it. The mirrors are in a better position than they are on the Duke. They're the same mirrors. A lot of people don't like the look of these, and I'm kind of included in that. I put the bar end mirrors on my Duke, but I have to say on the Adventure they are further out. I think it's probably because the bars are wider. They give you more view behind. On the Duke you get about 3/4 of the mirror, you're just looking at your arm and your shoulder, and then you get a tiny bit of view just in the corner of the mirror there, whereas on these, most of the mirror I've got a really good view behind. There's no vibration or anything. It's fantastic. It is a really lovely bike. Having said all that, it's £2,300 more than the Duke for the base model. Now bearing in mind the Duke, I think it's about 8.5 grand, or is it just under 9 grand for the base model, and I ended up, by the time I'd sort of got a bit busy with the options book, I ended up spending about 10.5 on mine. So to get the same options on this bike, you're looking at 13,000 plus. I mean, it's 11,300 for a base model. That's quite a lot of money. And I know it's a different bike to the Duke, but I don't really see where the extra almost £2,500 is. So that would bother me. Had I have test ridden this before buying my Duke, then it would have been on my list of bikes that I would potentially buy, to be honest, because it is great. And it, in all fairness, for the type of riding that I do, this would be a great all-round bike, and it probably would suit me a bit better than the Duke, because I do, you know, quite a bit of longer journeys, and I would quite happily go off-road on this as well. I think it's not one of those adventure bikes that's made to look like an adventure bike, but you wouldn't really go off-road with it. This is a bike that you could take off-road. It's got really good decent travel on the suspension, proper size wheels, spoked wheels, good tyres on as standard. It's very comfy for standing up on. I mean, if you're in this I mean, I'm in a standing position here now. It's lovely and narrow where your legs are sort of hugging around the seat, and it's very, very comfortable. So anyway, all in all, a very nice bike. Rubbish screen, great engine, really comfy seating position. I don't like the exhaust note. I'd have to change that. I don't remember my Duke ever sounding quite so puny. I think I don't like the look of the exhaust on this for a start. I think the rest of the bike looks really well made, and the end can on this just looks a bit cheap and nasty, and I don't like the sound of it either, but I'm sure that could be solved. I wouldn't mind keeping it for a bit longer, actually, to do a slightly more longer term review, because it is a nice bike. But this is just a first impressions, 1 hour on the bike review. I hope it's been useful, and when we are out of this COVID-19 issue, I'll hopefully be able to get some more bits done on the bike, and we can get to know each other a bit better, because I set up this channel, did a couple of bits in the garage, intended on waiting until the spring to get some you know, really get my teeth into doing the vlogging on the bike, and it's been slightly curtailed because of the coronavirus, so it's gonna have to wait. But I'm still going to continue making videos. I'm in the process, actually, of trying to edit a series of videos that I'm hoping to put out soon, that are they're just done at home. I've obviously not been out to do anything, but it's taken me quite a long time, so it will come eventually. But in the meantime, stay safe, and I will see you in the next video.